Thank you, Mamta. So let me share my full screen so that we get. Um, all right. So hello everyone. So as Mamta mentioned, Manu, solution architect in the developer experience team. So we'll be talking about the Jira and Confluence MCP servers, or otherwise called as the Atlassian MCP servers that we have deployed. Before I start the presentation, can we have a quick quiz? Mamta, you can launch the quiz just to get a sense of the audience that how many of you are already using the MCP servers. This is to get an idea that if you should, I should cover a little bit of time on explaining what is an MCP server.
Give me.
Yeah.
I think you can start with the
Yeah.
MCP
Yeah, we will
introduction,
start.
and meanwhile I'll launch on.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure. So anyway, I'll just have a quick introduction about the MCP. So MCP, or it's known as the Model Context Protocol. You can think of it as an extension to GitHub Copilot, right? And what to remember that. So today, if you look at the LLMs or GitHub Copilot, you have what is core of an AI product, which is the LLM, and on top of that, you have a product which is the GitHub Copilot, right? And the GitHub Copilot has a lot of tools. Things like it can look at the your console, it can look at your files, it can print output. So these are all different tools which are available to GitHub Copilot. And what if it needs a tool which needs to fetch information from the other sources, right? Third party sources. So this is where the MCP comes into picture. So with MCP, it can connect to other applications, which is outside of its scope, right? And how does it do? It connects through some standard protocol or which is defined, and this is what we have made use. So we have a full documentation, and there is another training that we have. If you want know more details about the MCP, want to know how exactly it works, then you can go through that recording, and there are obviously a lot of public information also is available. But most important point for us to remember that we are working very closely with cybersecurity and other teams to make sure that when we deploy MCP within the company, we deploy in a very secure way. We deploy with all the principles of the least privilege access. And the way we have implemented is that to make this MCP server work, you need to have your personal access token for the Jira product configured locally, and the application, the MCP server itself, is going to run locally, completely locally, and it's going to connect to Jira through APIs, right? So it's as safe as how you use it in a browser. Only thing is that instead of you, the AI coding agent or the GitHub Copilot would be using your MCP. Okay. Uh, with that, let me show you the actual product, how it works. So I am in my VS Code, and if you want to use the MCP server, what you need to do is you need to click this tab extensions, and once you are in extensions, you do @MCP, then you can see that whatever the MCP servers which are already deployed, all those products are already here. Sorry, something here. Yeah, so all the MCP servers you can see here, and whichever server that you want to install, you just click there and click on install, right? That would install it. We have a dedicated help page as usual. So we have created sorry, not this page. We have created all the documents about how to use it here, so you can go through the steps. If you have Docker desktop installed by any chance, that's a little bit easier. Otherwise, you need to set up your Python, etc. So that might be a little technical. What we also have is we have created some agents, so this can actually do some troubleshooting for you. Like if you have some issues with the MCP installation, so I was working with somebody, so it just did really help them. So this kind of gives some steps to the troubleshoot. So I would say you try to install from here, and if you see some issues, there is some, we are given some step how to install and troubleshoot. So then the agent comes here, and you can ask the agent, what MCP you have installed, etc., and it will have access to your files, local files, and it would try to do troubleshooting. And of course, if you still have issues, you can raise the support ticket via our GitHub channel, and somebody from our team would get back to you. So that would be the support process and the steps. Now let's come to the the actual usage, right? So as I mentioned, the MCP is an extension of your, the Jira workflow. So essentially, whatever I can do in Jira is as a by default an extension. MCP should be able to do. Okay, so I will be starting with a fairly simple use case. So let me take this ticket. And so imagine I'm a developer working on this ticket. What I want to do is to implement this particular ticket in my project. Okay, so let me clean it up. So I have a plain workspace. So there are two ways to use the MCP. So let me start with a simpler way. So what I'm going to do is I'll say connect to so in fact, I don't need to write the full thing, but let me try. So the AI is, as we know, is not deterministic, so it might work or might not work depending on its mode. So let me put the full tech context that you can understand. So I'll say connect to Jira to fetch, right? Let's see what it can. So my expectation here is that it should be able to connect to Jira and get the information about this particular ticket. Okay, so we have some. Okay, so as I mentioned, it did not pick up that it has to use the Atlassian MCP server. So let me repeat the question with being more specific. So AI needs to understand that it has to use the MCP server. So right now you can see when I given it a bit more details, it is using the Atlassian MCP connector. Ideally, it should be saying that it is using the Atlassian MCP server. So I don't know why it is using the term MCP connector. So let me check. Okay, so internally it is connecting to the MCP server that we have installed, and it has run the tool. So this tool is called as get issue. As you know, in Atlassian, we have the one of the APIs that gives you the details of the issue. So ideally, I'm expecting the details to be fetched. So I have been just being very generic here, not giving any details. I just said fetch. So it is not able to understand what exactly, or whatever it understood. So it did like, if you see here, it did multiple calls because the particular feature had multiple stories or tasks that I've created. So it has given all that, right? So it's given that whatever apex children, etc. So this is how it would work. If you're being like very specific, it would fetch more specific as a typical AI. But I just want to give a demo of how the functionalities are. Right now, as you can see, every time when you work creating all these context could be a bit challenging, or maybe a lot of repeating that you have to do. So what I'm going to do is that we have created an agent. This called as Atlassian MCP connector. I don't know why there are two, but and what this agent does is that it is kind of acts as a context, an additional context. It's not a very large file. It's some 50 lines, and you can download and modify it. But some of the important things, like what is my Jira project, what is my current release version, what is my project code, and what is my Confluence page ID, these kind of things. It will store so that you can ask the questions in a much easier way, and it will always pick up the MCP server, because we are specifically saying that you need to use the MCP server to do the work, right? But if you have, like, you are taking some information and doing some additional work, etc., then you might need to change your workflow a little bit. But in general, if you are talking to this Confluence or Jira, I would say this agent is an easier way. So we have published this details about this agent, how to use, etc., in the Yammer community. You can look. The agent is also available here. So if in this page there is a a generic section about how to use agents. And there is also a session, an R&D tech talk coming up next week, I think on 26th, where we will also explaining about it. So the idea is that you can look at these agents, and this particular agent you can download and install in your VS Code or in any of the IDEs that you're using, and that would help you a little bit in connecting the MCP server. Okay, so let's now use the agent, the custom agent that I created, this one, to work. So as we know, when we look at the Jira and Confluence, there are different workflows that we can talk about. So let me take the exact same issue. And so imagine that I am a developer. I'm completing. I'm in charge of doing this task. In fact, this particular story is about the releasing of the Atlassian MCP, which we have completed. So I'll say update this as I am doing a live demo. I'll say update this with a comment. Doing demo to Brox. How many we have? 3, 6, 2 people. So yeah, let's see. So I've just given I did not like put in quote, etc. So let the AI figure it out. And my expectation is that right now I'm giving the context that it has to use this thing. So it is understood that it has to use my particular project, my all whatever is required. So body, whatever. So I'll upload. So my expectation is that it would use the appropriate API to make this comment. Okay, so there is some issue with gateway. Just to try. Okay, so it's getting more smarter because it's automatically retrying by looking at the error. Okay, so you see second time it succeeded. So this is the real, like what we call as agentic, right? Because it has failed once and it knows that, okay, what is the issue? So issue is not some, like it's a timeout issue. So it can try after some time. So second time it worked. Let's test it out. Okay. Okay, so you can see it's a command, and the command is in my name, so there is no mention of AI, etc. This is because I have given my PAT token, so it's just making the API call to update the comments, right? So you can think of different use cases that you would like to perform, and we will have obviously follow-up sessions or learnings that as we see, but we have already seen quite a good use during the demo period, and we had a close POC period for a month. So there are many teams who have made use of this MCP server, and they are able to do various use cases, including for their sprint planning, including for their workflow, and some people are using stand up. So you can ask already if is easier thing which is available in in a in a Jira, why we should use it. So the job is to enable the tool, and how exactly you like to use the tool, that we leave it up to you. There are a lot of interesting use case that you can do, and we will be sharing many of them with larger, like we have released it last week. And I move to, so I have Bogdan with me, but before I move to Bogdan for a demo, I would do a quick pause here to ask or answer, if there is any questions in the session till now. So this is an example where I've updated a Confluence page because I got a request that we should add some more MCP servers to my backlog. So what I did is I normally would go to Confluence and add, but I've asked, and there is a different way to add in terms of, a column. So it takes some time. So I asked the AI, just update the Confluence page. So if you remember here, I have given the link just like this, status as backlog, whereas it is able to figure out the which column to add what is the name, and it has figured out, if you see this thing, that okay, it's updated in HTML, but if you look at the thought process, it was saying that okay, I need to update HTML, etc. So it was able to add, right, and the page which I updated was the main Confluence page of our developer experience, where you have all the backlog. So you see these three was added. There was in fact some HTML issues, so I would not say this is like foolproof at this stage, but it was really useful, already, for me. I think you should all try it and give us any feedback. So before I invite Bogdan, I'll open up 5 minutes for any questions that you have. Yeah.
Manu, there is one question from Prasant. How can we chain multiple MCP servers in one workflow? For example, Jira tickets as context, Playwright MCP to create automation test cases. I think the answer is creating an agent using an instruction file. I will let you answer that.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, you can create agent, and whenever you do multiple agents, I mean, multiple tools, we should be, careful about the context window. So that would be something that I will be careful. Normally, you have a context window somewhere here. I don't know why it is not showing, but that is one thing. Like you should see that are you expanding your context window? But in general, to use, all you need to do is to make sure both the servers are on. Okay, so if you see in my thing now, Playwright is not started, because the moment you start the server, it will broadcast all the tools, so it will consume some of the memory, or the context window, that's the right word. So just turn on, and ideally it should be able to pick up. So actually you could be able to run your automation test and update the Jira thing like in the one go. So you just need to make sure that the prompt is very proper, and if you think like you have a custom agent for your project, you can create like one specific agent by copying both the contents, right? Whatever I have shown, the MCP connector content and the other content. So you can copy both, and yeah, it should be able to work. Okay, so there is a question on CLI. Yeah, so MD content as an HTML page. So one of the debate that is ongoing is that is the Confluence right place to document now? We don't want to answer like take up that question because it's a complex question for us. But because the MD files, as you know, it's very the HTML file is not good for kind of agent to provide context. Okay, so it's good, I would say, from a reading standpoint. But because it's HTML, it's very heavy. The agents is not very good in like formatting it and updating it, etc. So you can actually push an HTML. There is actually a way to do the MD file via a plugin in Confluence. I have not tried it, so that could be one option. Um, but we should also, I think, start looking at options of using Git itself as a documentation page. Again, I've not tried it, but I'm thinking that is the direction in which we have to think. So for now, yeah, I don't have an answer. We have to try this out. Any other question, Mamta, I should take now, or should we probably?
Some custom MCP servers, Manu, do you want to
Yeah,
answer
I think
that?
we have
Where
the
do we
yeah.
post it? Yeah.
So I think custom MCP, we have a policy, so we can put that here, the link. The basic idea is that if the tool is existing already, we don't want to rebuild it. We want to use as much of the community version or the official provided MCP servers. But if it is both options are not available, we are open to put something. But for us to work on, for me and Mamta to work on, it has to be in the developer experience scope. That means it has to be used by developers. If it's a business related MCP, then I think AI Hub as a policy, and I've linked that in my document, so you should consider that. All right. So with that, let's see bit more use cases. I'll try to answer the question at the end. We have Bogdan here. I'll let Bogdan introduce himself. And before that, I'd like to thank Bogdan for his time. And Bogdan has did some great work with the team on using these MCP servers during its testing period. Bogdan, if you're online, you can start sharing the screen and continue with the presentation for use
Absolutely.
cases.
Thank you very much, man, for this. Hello, everybody. Name is Bogdan. Cool. In this specific short presentation, I will, of course, tell you a bit about me, and then we have some use cases we found very, very useful, and that have saved both money to the company and as well helped a lot our management teams, especially the management teams. So,
Bogdan, if you're sharing, not
yeah,
yet visible.
right now I'm going to share in
Yeah.
a sec. That should hopefully you should hopefully see my screen now. Cool. So use cases. First, I'm going to tell you very briefly about me. So, name is Bogdan. I am an AI enablement engineer, specifically in Global Hems and Wiser Home under Tracy Richardson. I've been pretty much leading the AI enablement for these projects, specifically and teams for the past 6 months, by of course adding different AI tooling like custom agents, skills, and workflows, using multiple MCPs. And basically, what I'm doing is I help people get better at what they do whilst catering for each individual team needs. My background is as a full stack engineer, that's been recently moved to AI enablement. And the idea is, of course, I try and explore all these new AI tools to make life easier for both management and development teams. So, without any further introductions, let's get to some actual use cases. So the first use case, this is happening just before our PI started. PI means product increment for whoever's not used to this keyword. Basically, a bigger sprint, let's call it. And we had to prepare a specific list of bugs in with priorities for each of them. So we had to prioritize basically every single bug based on the impact column. Now, there were 302 Jira bugs, and our PO had very little time. We're speaking about 2 days to do all these specific categorization. Truthfully speaking, this would have been impossible without using MCPs and generally speaking AI tooling, because you would have had to go through the actual to every single book, understand what it is about, think about what category it would fit in, then create the category if it was missing, and update as well a whole CSV. You will see in a moment with this information. So what we had to do was very simple. Get our AI to go through all these 302 Jira books, understand what they are about, then update a CSV file that was presented then afterwards in our PI planning specific meeting. So that's what we aim to achieve, and that's what we've achieved. So I'm going to show you uh, the initial file. This was the initial CSV that I was given. So you see the impact column was rather poorly filled. So it had areas with missing data, areas with unknowns, because of course there's 302 bugs. So it was quite a long list of what our PO had to complete. So she had to go as much as possible through as many as she could before she basically didn't have any more time. So then we sorted, of course, to using this Atlassian MCP. And this is what I'm going to show you in a moment. This was the actual chat that, of course, I was given to our agent. Specifically, we have here the initial prompt. The initial prompt, of course, in this situation is a bit more, I'd say, comprehensive. So it gives a bit of background of what we're trying to do. Specifically, we're telling it that we will attach an Excel with Jira books, and what we want is basically to update that column impact We tell it what, of course, that column refers to, so it understands that it will need to go through basically every single book and understand what it is about, and understand as well, try to categorize it in a way. Now, of course, we're telling it that we have some areas that some impact columns that are already filled with data and some that are not filled with data. But of course, I'm also telling it that we haven't used necessarily the best wording to describe what the area is about, because we had some unknowns as well there. So after, of course, I've given the book as an attached context and this prompt, I run the prompt. So let's see what it actually did. First, initially, of course, it looked at the CSV, and I'm telling it, make sure you go through the Jira and fetch the information about these tickets to understand what category they belong. This is called steering. You can steer the AI whilst, of course, it is thinking. I think that will be covered next week, probably, as part of the agentic work. But the idea is, whilst the AI is thinking, the model is thinking, we can give it hints of what it must do. So I just wanted to make sure it's going to go through Jira, because there were a lot of tickets and I didn't want to waste time. And that's what it's done. It's actually run the Jira search tools from that. And I just wanted to show you what it's done under the hood. Basically, it used a GQL specifically to get all these tickets and understand what they were about. And of course, for every single one, it outputted a lot of information. So that's what it's done. Now we fast forward a bit on, and you see it began to read basically the contents of, it downloaded the contents of all these to be able to read what the book is about. And then it's going to create a small Python script to update our CSV. So basically create a new CSV based on the original one with these column impact updated. And at the end, of course, it's given us a very nice summary of what it's done with any renaming that it's applied to any of the columns that were not properly named. Because, of course, as it had the capability to go through so many so quickly, it found probably some smaller mistakes that we made, and it was correcting them as well. So let's see what the result was. I go to the updated file. This is the result it actually gave us. Now, as you see, it did a few other things as well. It nicely colored the columns, and it gave us, for the impact column, of course, highlighted it for every single book, or every single ticket in this case. And we've, of course, double checked it. So that is an important note to make. We didn't just asked it to do it and then just took it for granted that it went right. We've actually double checked most of these and make sure it was correct. And of course, it also gave us a legend to understand what each of these categories is about, which we find really important because it would give us a bit more information about some of the renamings it's done. And of course, if we wouldn't have agreed to, we could have asked a follow-up to restructure all of these categories. But that is one of the examples. So this saved us, this saved our PO about 2 to 3 days of very intensive work, in which she was able to prepare pretty much all the other bits and pieces for our sprint planning, PI planning specifically, which led to a much better meeting in terms of the strategy we're going to have in the current PI. And of course, this helped the business be a bit more, I'd say, based on what we want to actually do. So that was the first example. Second one is going to be a bit more interesting. Now, we had as well a situation still for the same PI planning meeting, in which we had, of course, to make sure our book fixing teams would understand clearly what they need to work on. So for this situation, we had to analyze about 210 plus hub connectivity tickets and bug reports to understand exactly what tickets need to be addressed by our developers. But the problem is, as part of this scenario, we know there's a lot of cases where the testers themselves will go through an app or a system, will find a bug, will create a ticket for that, and that's pretty much end of story. But the problem is some of these might have been duplicated along the way, because we're speaking about some books that maybe have been created a few months ago, some books that have been created a few weeks ago, and so on and so forth. So they could have been replicated in the description, that is in what essentially the ticket was doing. So the idea was, let's make sure we're not having our developers work on similar issues that are basically duplicated by the testers when they created them. So for this situation, going through all 210 plus tickets would have been quite a very intensive process and a very slow process. And given that we needed to do this very quickly, we didn't have any other choice but to actually employ some AI tooling to help us actually get to the bottom of this. And this is very important because not only we wanted to get a clear idea of which tickets were duplicated, but we also wanted to update a Confluence page with the results. So that can be given to the management to get an actual understanding of that. So we employed Jira and Confluence as well, because we got the information from Jira on every single ticket, analyzed that. We allowed AI, to the model itself, to find any, let's say, links between different tickets and understand which ones are duplicates of each other, of others, and then create a Confluence page based on these categories and make sure we note all the duplicates. So our management team can go and make sure these are closed. And that's what we've done. And I'm going to show you very quickly the actual chat for that. So this was even easier in terms of the prompt. The prompt was very simple, I would say, without too much context, rather to the point. And yes, I wouldn't call this the best example of how a prompt should be built. However, it is a good example that you don't actually need to give it that much information to give you a good answer back. So the idea was to summarize all the books related to hub connectivity issues. The issues should be from this year and only from Jira. And after that, of course, we can see it will run a Jira search and it will try and find everything with hub connection or hub connectivity issues. And then that's what the output was, a lot of tickets. So it's going to go and say it found about 210 total issues. So it gave me a summary of these issues. And after that, I was able to say, of course, based on these that you've just mentioned, find duplicate ones and then create a Confluence page under a parent. And the parent was actually given as a link. So it knew exactly where to add that specific Confluence page. Now, for the sake of this demonstration, I have recreated this page. Of course, this was created quite a few months ago, but I've recreated it in my own personal space, and I will be sharing that with you in a moment. But the idea is, of course, it looked through the Confluence tools that are available, created a plan, and then analyzed all the tickets specifically to find the duplicates. After that, it created the Confluence page and given me a very nice summary of that situation. So the page itself, you can find it. I'm gonna go to my Safari. And this is the page itself. So as I said, I just recreated this for the sake of this demonstration. This was actually used for the sprint planning of our PI. The idea is it created an XHTML from that description itself, from the summary of what it found. And it helped greatly our management team to make sure all our engineers actually work on issues that are not duplicated. And of course, this was done on categories for these situations. So it gave us basically for every single part of the hub connectivity issues, it kind of categorized them. So it was much easier to understand exactly which ones and on what categories they were duplicated. And this was quite very useful because don't forget there were 200 issues, 200 tickets to analyze. But yeah, that was pretty much what I wanted to share with you. The only very quick other bit is one of our POs has also found a very good use case for it by analyzing API contracts that were, of course, in our case, held in Confluence. I cannot share that, but I can tell you it saved us about 150,000 euros just by analyzing that contract from Confluence and finding a cost pattern that has never been connected. And that is now a tracked 2026 opportunity. So as I said, there's a lot of ways we can use this MCP tool. And of course, as the usages are going to increase, we're going to see a lot of productivity, hopefully, from this. But that was pretty much all I wanted to share you. Thank you very much for this.
Thank you, Bogdan. All right, so I have tried to answer some questions in the chat in the meanwhile. Yeah, anybody has any comment or questions? We are, Robert says, I think we have some 20 minutes, so we can answer any questions or any comments you have. Okay, so I think the slide for this particular presentation, it might not be, that much interesting, but we do have a slide or, a separate session that we did on MCP that maybe we can share. That would be, I think, more useful. Yes, Prashant.
Those links are already on chat, Manu. So
okay. Thanks, Mamta.
I'll pin
yes,
it.
Prashant, you have a question?
Yeah, so Manu, our org uses their own separate Jira, right? So we are free to use any of them, right? The global one and the CPS one.
Yeah. So this just uses the CPS one you can use. Even any other Jira you can use. So this is the way you configure it. What you should be careful, and you should put the token and the URL, etc. In a proper way. And even if you are using the agent that I've created, there are some lines that you need to change. So yeah, I think you should be able to use. So yeah, just be careful with the connections. That's all.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yep.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I was doing some testing regarding this without using this MCP, but creating some scripts to try to create tickets through the API. But I was feeling that it was a bit complex to really understand which custom fields could be mandatory to really be able to create a story. Have you found this problem before, or how are you managing this?
Are you using APIs or MCP?
APIs.
I think MCP, at least when I tried to create, we did not had to do a lot of work. It was able to pick up at least the common fields. I didn't do any custom fields. So maybe you can try with MCP and see if there is any better. I think MCP is much better because AI has a native understanding of tools and schema, etc. So it would work much better. So maybe try MCP, and I think Bogdan has something to add.
Yeah, because sometimes specific projects have their own custom fields. It could be mandatory,
yeah, but generally I don't think custom fields we allow them to be mandatory. I need to check with the Jira team. My experience, maybe Mamta you can add, but custom fields are generally is not mandatory, right, Mamta? When we create the Jira schemas in our, I don't know, maybe we need to check.
Well, I found some cases. And for me, it was a pain to really identify which fields were really the mandatory ones because, yeah.
Custom field can be a topic. Yeah. Mamta,
I
yes. Or Bogdan, you want to add?
So you're talking about mandatory fields while creating Jira? Sorry.
Mamta, the
Yes,
question is
yes.
that is there any custom fields that we make mandatory when they create Jira? Maybe there are.
That depends. If while
Okay.
creating your Jira project or your issue type, if it was mentioned that it should be mandatory, then only it will be made mandatory.
Okay.
Otherwise, natively in Jira, it's only description, summary is the mandatory field.
Okay. Yeah. Bogdan, you want to add?
Yeah, so in our case, we actually have the exact same case, Sebastian. So we have, at least in the Wiser organization, we have certain custom fields that are mandatory, and it was indeed a problem, and it is a problem sometimes when we allow or we want our models to create, even via MCP, to create these tickets. So currently, all my boards, my enablement boards are managed by my models, so by the via the MCP. However, in order to make this a smooth process, I had to define a skill in order to actually give my models a bit of an understanding first of our custom schema for the tickets. Once it knew the schema, it was very easy to get that to work every single time in a consistent way. I think skills are going to be as well a topic that's going to be covered in the next week. So definitely looking forward to that for you. And I think that's going to answer a lot of your questions. But just to let you know, yes, we can work with custom fields, and yes, we're successful working with custom fields. However, it is just a bit of a different approach where you must give the model basically this context on how your tickets are actually built with the custom fields.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Anybody has any other comment or question? Okay, so there was a question of like, what is the target user? So right now we don't have like a target user defined because we are like in a very early phase, and our primary responsibility has been to enable as many MCPs as possible because we have a small team in DX, so we have I think some 8-9 servers available. Even the next month we would be enabling. We have enough backlog to enable servers. We will start looking at the different use cases as well. But one of the most important use case that we see is a couple of things that I think we really want to push is one of this that today the AI can generate a lot of architecture documentation, right? And those documentation, as and when the developer is implementing, if you think about the space that you do a plan phase, then you implement these architecture, it kind of stays in the like in the prompt responses, right? The developer evaluates, but it doesn't store anywhere. So one of the things we want to enforce or at least recommend is to update it into a Confluence space or the GitHub space or wherever that's kind of stored. So this is one use case we think. Second is that we need to see the context of how well it can do, but the test execution and updating of that status is some other use case it can do. Then test case creation and its updation is obviously a big job. Like we have some examples where it could drill down the test pyramid what we have in Jira with X-ray, and it was able to create all the things in a proper format. So that I think would be a good or a big use case to attempt. What we are expecting is that you all can try it in different ways and come back with your success stories and reach out to Mamta or me, and we will try to publish it with larger Schneider groups so that we can learn from each other what has worked, what has not worked, what are the tips and tricks. So I think that's what we should do, and this is end of the day a capability or a knowledge that is a tool that is available to us, right? A very special skills, and we need to make sure that how we use it and talk to each other what worked and what not worked, and that would really will benefit, is what according to me we should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, to go with that, I'm just going to say I've been having putting some questions or rather answers in the chat, right? I feel like it would be important to sort of focus on, especially engineering management. I'm not in management, right? But you know, like you said, you know, I've worked with making X-ray test cases, right? You know, but the biggest thing I find making X-ray test cases is the fact that, you know, just retrieving context to sufficiently create test cases that are bulletproof enough to actually use is the name of the game. That's most of the work at this point. And that's very hard. Obviously now we have the MCP connectors, maybe that will help, but at the same time, stories have issues in terms of being properly defined. There's many different data sources. You know, maybe giving KT your knowledge, especially to engineering management, I think will relieve a lot of pressure and a lot of work from engineering, especially because context will be more available, easier to use.
So when you say engineering management, is like you're saying to explain to people how it works, that is like to leadership and management as well? That's what you're trying to say?
Leadership, management, non-technical, you know, the people who define the stories and, you know, create documentation.
So one of the things that we are trying to push, so this is a bit early and I'm trying to work on it, but so end of the day, and we all know the context is important, right? And context we have to think in two ways. So one is obviously the current context of your workflow, where you do a story and you create manual test cases, you do code implementation, then we do automation, and then verify and ship, right? So this is our normal work. But many times the challenge we face is not in this particular flow, but it's also what is the foundational knowledge, right? Like what is the existing system which is kind of missing, right? And that includes your architecture, your requirements, your domain knowledge, like how we use different words, etc. So what we are trying to propose, and some work has already been started in this line, is that we should all spend some time, or whatever the time we are saving in the some small wins, we should rather invest in creating this kind of context foundation, right? And this is might be the reason that some teams would be able to move fast and some teams will not be able to move fast, right? If you have this kind of and this means this is simply some MD files in your repo, that each task can like take up or look up for any information which needed. So we should also try to build this, and this like nobody from outside the team can do it, right? This is only the team inside can do it, because you need only understand the context very deeply, what your application is, and things like that. So all this kind of context engineering work is important, and we are communicating it to wherever forms or areas, domains we get as a team. And Gana also, like my manager, when we present to leadership, this point is being made very clear. If the team has to move fast, we also have to invest in this context engineering. So yes, we will continue to focus on this point, that speed is not like automatically you don't get speed. Like whatever you read outside, people say 30% code generated, 50% code generated, it won't naturally come, right? We have to like do some work to do this. So this, yes, we'll talk about it more and more.
Yeah, speed definitely comes from the top down. If you have, sort of inefficiency at the top, it just cascades problems, especially for AI agents, but yeah, also for human beings.
Yes. Mladen, I don't know if you already put your comment, if you want to speak something.
Yeah, I have a comment and a question. I'm actually doing at the moment a task that is for integrating test automation with Jira. So this presentation was really helpful to me, but it also comes out of the blue, out of nowhere. And I know that there is a serious drive in the Schneider organization to facilitate AI to improve everybody's effectiveness. But is there a way, maybe it's not even up to you, but how to have this as a newsletter or something that we know that somebody is working on a particular case or use case with AI, because it would be really helpful. And also a lot of teams, a lot of projects inside Schneider, they're trying to solve the same problem they have. And you mentioned that we should share our success stories, but in case we don't have a proper channel to communicate that, it will be still not very efficient, I may say. And maybe I can stop here, and then I have a comment on the common context.
Let me answer that question. So I think it's a good point. So with respect to the team, the developer experience team, what we do with GitHub Copilot, you can subscribe to this community, Yamo community or Viva Engage. I think we've post quite regularly, and even our friends are complaining. Me and Mamta, we are spamming them with too much content. So we post very regularly updates there. So that is one area. With respect to test automation or more technical collaboration, there is a SWEP community. I don't know if you're aware. Software engineering inside software engineering domain. Maybe I'll ping you the grouping, and there is quite a bit of content there with respect to test automation and some of the content. But in general, I mean, we are like all developers, right? I'm trying to solve. So it's quite okay to have multiple solutions and adjust to the solution to your specific needs, I would say. So yeah, try this out and maybe this would work for you, and it's good. So yeah.
Yeah, and about the comment, it is related to the common context that you mentioned, because I have been in touch with Raul Venapusa, and he was telling that there is an initiative to create a retrieval augmented generation database for all Schneider projects, because at some point two projects may be interconnected. So it would be really nice, and maybe this will be the missing point that you may be working on.
So I'm not a good fan of creating Schneider-wide context. Okay, so because there are many reasons. So because Schneider is such a large company, end of the day we'll become like a LLM, like it's a whole world, right? So when I say context engineering, it is very team level and project level, right? Even within one group, I remember like right now I work in a small DX team, but I used to be part of the energy management software team where we used to build the panel software. Okay, so even in that group, uh, you look at the context for different teams. Ideally, should have separate context file. MCP may be a solution, but the moment we build our engineering solutions, I think we should try to do with a simple MD file for a project around 1,000 words or 2,000 words as a starting point. For any reason, if that is not working, then we should go for a merge solution. I am working with Rahul on this particular solution. He's is trying to build, so we'll see how useful it is. But whatever the recommendation that we receive from the GitHub as well, so we work very closely with the GitHub solution architect, how they do it practically, and we have some project in which within Schneider we are trying to do it. And this is again very new, right? I mean, everybody is learning, like they are themselves. GitHub is learning, so we need to see how exactly it is. But we should try to do with simple solutions, starting with if an MD file with a 1,000 line or a 2,000 words, it can give the enough context. I think that's what we should do. We should not try to create an MCP, like definitely not a Schneider level MCP of all knowledge, but even the project level also I should be careful before we. This is my like personal view, but we should try, right? And there is no kind of good answer. We should try and experiment and see what works. Okay, so we have few minutes, 5 minutes. Mamta, anything else that we should address right now?
No, Manu, I think we are good. We will share a list of AI Tech Talks also. I think there were a couple of users asking for where they can find more information on this. Probably they can be part of Tech Talks. So
yeah,
let's.
Yeah, probably we'll create
that.
Yeah, just look at the chat
Yes.
window. Just take a note. I think the next invite also we'll try to post. So this session on 26th would be interesting. We are talking about a little bit about CLI, custom agents, and skills. And I'll be joined by including Bogdan will talk about skills, and Vishnu will talk about a custom agent, and custom agent essentially talks about how you can use the Schneider Azure landing zone deployment. So this is also very interesting because we customize for Schneider need. And we have Jonathan is going to speak about CLI and how he's using Playwright MCP within the CLI. So it will be, I think, interesting to see. So yeah, if you're interested, you can join the 3 different use cases, maybe a little bit more packed. And if required, we'll do more sessions, but at least to get an idea about what possibilities, I think it would be interesting.
Manu, I have a quick
Yep.
question, Raghu. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
was just trying the Atlassian MCP in Visual Code, and it didn't work. So is there somewhere documented what are the steps in terms of configuring the MCP or whatever?
Yes, there are some steps. Also, there is an agent which can troubleshoot your question. So, for example, if I take if I share my screen, yeah, I'll keep the link. But this agent also would look at your local VS Code, and it will check for your configurations, etc., and it can answer. So yeah, you can try that this thing. Okay, I'll share the agent. So yeah, there is a wiki page and there is this agent that can help you.
Okay.